Would be 1, 2, 3. in.
You're unmuted.
2, 3 in.
1:30.
Okay,
They sandbag me so bad.
it's yours.
I know.
I don't know what you want me to do there.
Let's call this meeting to order. The study session, we're in the Frank Walter House boardroom. Roll call please.
Cunningham. Do not,
You betcha.
Markey,
Here.
Nye,
Present.
Roloffs,
Here.
Sauer,
I like that answer. You betcha. I'm here.
Worsakki,
Here.
Commissioner Cunningham. Here.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have an agenda in front of us.
So a comment before you take a motion. In our last minutes, we had said under topics for continued discussion that the Frankfurt recycling site that this matter would be set on the July study session agenda. Do we want to push that out to next month or do we want to put it on this one?
Yes, okay, if we could push it out another month, I touched base with the mayor and we're not ready to bring that forward just yet.
Just bring it to your attention.
Yep. We're still waiting on a few things from Frankfurt.
Jeanette moves to approve.
Second. Got motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Right.
Opposed? Brings us to the meeting minutes of 6/11/24. Make a motion to approve the minutes.
One correction, I guess, 11. Oh, that's way back. All right, sorry. I was trying to say I wasn't here, but I was.
A second.
Got a motion support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Brings us to our first public comment. Anybody like to participate in public comment? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comment. Brings us to our HR update.
Good afternoon. I had a little overview in your packets today. The biggest thing I really wanted to focus on is open enrollment. It's what I'd like to talk about. We have, as discussed earlier, open enrollment is going to be August 1st through August 23rd. We're going to have meetings available August 5th in the Board of Commission chambers. We'll have meetings throughout the entire day from 8 to 5. Advantage Benefit Group will be on site. Jennifer will be the one conducting those meetings, and she'll be there to answer questions as well as some members of her team and myself. AFLAC will be joining us as well. August 8th, we're going to be at the EOC training room from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. I anticipate we'll have at least 2 meetings up there. I'm just not sure of the times quite yet. August 14th in the commission chambers, we're going to have a member from Priority Health here to be able to answer any questions. I'm going to be setting up 15-minute increments and sending that out to all employees to be able to schedule. If it becomes too full, I talked with Jennifer this morning. She has the ability to bring another priority person on site. So if it's a lot of employees coming in, we can have another person here as well. Communication will be sent out by the end of the week regarding this. I wanted to make sure it was approved prior to sending out any notification to employees. And employees will be making their elections through Employee Navigator. I would like to have all employees actually go in and make their selections, but I think it'll be something we talk about prior to sending out notification to employees. Just so they can go in and see the plan, and then they have the option to make any HSA contributions themselves, which they can elect through that Employee Navigator portal. And I think it's important for employees to be exposed to that. So I think I'm leaning towards having every employee go through the Employee Navigator process, but again, I think we'll talk about it this week and notification will be sent out to all employees by the end of the week. Now, there's a lot of information covered this morning. Did anyone have any questions about open enrollment or the new plans?
So open enrollment,
Open enrollment,
you don't have to attend the meetings. You could do that on your own. Is that right?
correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
And some notice will be sent out, some links or something will get us to where we need to go for that.
Yes, yep.
The meetings are just if we have questions.
Yes, because it's such a big change and transition, we wanted the opportunity for several employees, or
Like-
all employees to have the opportunity to come.
Honestly, even if you weren't, I think
Yeah.
it's a great idea that we have those meetings. And on the policies that you're gonna bring forward to us at the end of the month.
Mhm.
The hours of work policy. Is there gonna be anything controversial in it?
Well, there is going to be a remote work portion in there, and so that's something you can opt in, opt out, but we didn't want to make the decision prior to bringing it for you or make the decision for you by not having the opportunity to discuss it. So it is going to be included in that particular policy, and it's something we can discuss at that time. If you think it would be something we should talk about more extensively, we could also bring it to the study session the following month as well.
I'm gonna leave that up to the chair. It just seems to me that based on some conversations I've been in, might not just be a presentation.
Uh,
There may be some different feelings on that.
Mhm.
Agreed.
So I'll leave that between you and the chair on what you guys want to do.
Well, we're gonna take a holistic approach with all of that, and so that's part of the reason it's coming forward, because yeah, there is different opinions on remote work. But then there's situations that we should consider as a whole, like if somebody is on, partial medical leave or on a work comp claim, if they can work remote, should we allow that so that we're then not, paying into this work comp claim or something like that? So we want to take this holistic approach of flexible work and remote work and hours of work and consider all situations, not just this, yeah, you can work remote kind of thing.
I'd like to discuss because
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like it gets abused
Yes.
Yes,
and management end of it and oversight is not always able to follow up when somebody's working remotely.
Yes.
Accountability.
Yet on the other hand, there is times where it's applicable. So
Right.
mhm,
I just think that some of the policies you've brought to us so far, that's been more about modernizing them and making sure we're in compliance with today's HR laws.
mhm,
But then when you get into policies like that are more
Discretion.
subjective,
correct.
it can, each one of us may have a different view on it.
Oh,
And I don't know if board meetings are used to try to rebuild a policy, or is this the place where we build those things?
True. I mean, I would argue that hours of work policy is modernizing our policy, but
Mhm.
I could see how that is controversial and there could be a further discussion associated with it. So I would be happy to move it to a study session if we think it would be a bigger topic.
Jackie,
I think that would be great.
finish your thought.
Oh, no, that was it.
I have no doubt that it is about modernizing our practices.
Yeah.
It's just, some of them are kind of, the roadmap is already built for you and you really know where you've got to go. And others there's a lot of discretion in it and still getting to modernizing your policy.
Absolutely. Okay, does anyone have any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we're up to Josh with Grow Benzie.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Josh Stoltz, born and raised in Lake Ann. I now live in Frankfurt. I'm the executive director for Grow Benzie. Excited to give you a short presentation about where Grow Benzie is today. A lot of you have heard me speak over the years. I'm coming up on 10 years working at Grow Benzie. The context of how we got to the point of where we're at but I'm really enthusiastic about having a communications team and a bigger team now to actually present this to you today. So
Everybody
Yeah,
else needs
right.
to drive.
in terms of context,
You can just
I will just,
roller bar.
okay. In terms of context, I'm just gonna start here. We all know that how we started 15 years ago. We bought that commercial plant nursery. It was all volunteers. 6 years of just fixing the driveway and fixing the roof. And this is not typical, or this is pretty typical for a nonprofit. So what I want to do is just emphasize our growth as a nonprofit is not abnormal. This is what most organizations do. They start with an idea, they start with a spark. Someone says, we need to do this thing. They gather their friends, they gather a board of directors, and then they approach that need with resources. They grow to the point of, well, we need to hire somebody. And that's what they did. Our only income was from grants and from our annual party fundraiser. I was hired in October of 14 as their first full-time director. And my objective, they told me, was to offer programs based on need, start utilizing the space, and make sure we have a diversified income. So what I was doing was offering that space to other initiatives in the community. And that's when people would hear about the Benzie Bee Guild or the sewing studio and the Days for Girls that make the reusable feminine hygiene kits. The kitchen, our incubator kitchen was its own little program. We provided that after school, the wood shop program. When we didn't know if there was going to be a wood shop program, I was in front of the school board multiple years, and we had that after school program making bee boxes with kids and adults in that skilled trade studio, and they eventually brought that back to the school. But within a few years, people started saying, "Oh, now you guys are just doing too much." For the first 6 years, people drive by and go, "What on earth what's going on there?" The next 3 or 4 years, people were saying, "Well, now you're doing too much. We see a food truck there. We see kids running around. You're teaching classes about how to grow food. There's sewing. What is this?" Well, we were just using that space. My business background gave me a lot of experience in marketing and incubating businesses. And so what I was doing was providing marketing support, volunteer recruiting, really basic business essentials. And what we realized was there's this lane that no one is providing in Benzie County. And we partnered with Rotary Charities out of Traverse City. This would have been 2017 to start looking at systems change, which a lot of you have already heard me talk about. We know that food is connected to education. Kids need to eat healthy food in order to think straight. We know housing is connected to the job market or early childhood. So these systems and sectors were always not connected, but existing outside of one another. And we started seeing these patterns of how they could communicate with each other. That's when we decided to do another study. You guys we're all fans of studies, feasibility studies, and these long, lengthy questionnaires. What we did instead was we hired Northern Trust out of Chicago, and they took existing strategic plans. They took your master plan, your planning plan, municipal plans from local townships, nonprofit organizations, and then regional entities, Housing North, the Great Start Collaborative, these 5 and 10 county organizations. We stacked those together. Those are 70 organizations we stacked together to find out what exactly was the need in Benzie County. We found out that there was no coordinating body to make sure there was communication between government, nonprofit, and private sector. We realized a lot of us do studies and we would just put them on the shelf. We got our answer and then we put them on the shelf. And no one was maintaining that information. And then no one was acting as the communicator. We don't know what's going on within the early childhood sector because they're out of capacity. So we decided to move forward. And after doing all these studies, it took us a few years, we formalized ourselves as a rural prosperity incubator about a year and a half ago. So you hear this word prosperity incubator, we're a year ahead of the state renaming their Office of Labor and Prosperity, or their Economic and Opportunity, into the Prosperity Office. And this is our mission, we foster projects and initiatives that improve the lives of children's families and communities in Benzie County. However, people say, well, okay, well, that makes sense, but how? Here it is. These are the technical services that we provide. You all know that we provide program space. We currently have 19 organizations that we provide partner services for. Program space, communication support. These are essential things for a small nonprofit to grow up that life cycle And then they get to that point of, well, do we need to hire a full-time person to be that executive director? Do we need more grant writing? Do we need more communications? Do we need a fiscal sponsor or bookkeeping? That is the lane that we filled because no one was filling it. And we realized how much more effective we could be by offering that service. Of course, the food and farming enterprises, that farm that we have is now an incubator farm. We're on our third farmer that we provide affordable and low-risk space for farmers to enter the market. The incubator kitchen, we now have 6 entrepreneurs that generates hundreds of thousands of dollars and employs over a dozen people throughout Benzie County. But here, I'm going to zoom in here. This is what I'm excited about, communications. There's more illustrations and ways to understand this. You can't see this clearly, but here is a key to the services we provide. And here's one example. The Human Services Collaborative Body that you all granted $3,000 to go towards, essential for networking, for social services in Benzie County. We provide the backbone support for that. So Sarah May is a contractor for Grow Benzie. We pay her paychecks. We process her receipts and all the membership dues that come in for that. We also help write grants. We provide communication support and grant or program space. Benzie Broadband Initiative, we're happy to help out with that Robin grant, that $8 million that the EDC led with Cherry Capital Communications. We help with their grant, communications, program space, and a little bit of coaching to help with the community support on that. And then here's why here, why now. This is our home. We're rooted in Benzie County. We have a track record of trust. There's rural needs. You're all aware of it. We all talk about it. People say there's no work being done. You know, who's doing what? Well, we are doing it. And if I know you have these in front of you, the Bay Area Youth Initiative is one example. We have the Northern Michigan Regional Entity who provide liquor tax dollars. We're not big enough to have our own nonprofit in Benzie County, but we do have enough money to pay a coordinator to help facilitate those dollars and make sure the programming is right. You all know Best Benzie County. They have multiple programs to help build the culture of education in Benzie County. NMC was one of their projects, but they also have worked with the Reconnect program and several other ways to get affordable education for skilled trades and kids to attend schools. So these all could be their own nonprofits, but if they rise up that life cycle, the life cycle diagram, they're all going to be competing. We all go to Stapleton's and ask for a gas card for a silent auction. We all go to Crystal Mountain and ask for money. We're now organized enough as a prosperity incubator where we're formalizing relationships with foundations, local community donors, private donations, and business donations. And of course, we have earned income. We have our event center, we have our kitchen, we have our shared office space, we have our incubator farm. Those are all earned income opportunities for us that help employ our campus manager. And that's the next part of our growth, is a staggered step up approach. We have the strategic plan in place, but now it's time to tell the story. So what we're doing this year is we're telling this story, the funders, to the community, to our government officials, to make sure everybody really understands that after 10 years of Josh telling you the context of where we came, this is where we're at now. And now we're prepared to start. We've been discussing future opportunities in the economic field, as well as other organizations in Traverse City who reach out and will never have a final full-time presence in Benzie County. Grow Benzie is in that position. So I asked to present today for a little, maybe some Q&A if you guys have any questions.
Josh, I'll kick some off. Okay. First, can you talk a little bit about your founders and who, if any, are still involved?
Sure. Mary Weissar, CPA, downtown Beulah, Cheryl and Art Roth on the North Shore of Crystal Lake, Bruce and Becky Ogilvy now live in Frankfurt, and Richard and Mary Ann Hendricks were all co-signers. So this was an idea that sprouted up from Marty and Betty Jablonski's son Marley's graduation party. They said we should start a greenhouse or a raised bed, a place to teach kids where food comes from. In 90 days, they bought that property, 4 acres. They started a nonprofit. Those were the co-signers, locals that put their name on the bottom line. Within 6 years, we were able to sign our own leases, and they're all still involved.
Can you elaborate on your funding sources? I heard you say about you provide revenue generating activity, but as a percentage of revenue coming in, how much of it is for grants and private contributions versus what you're getting for renting out the kitchen as an example?
Sure. So our annual budget's $250,000 for our core Grow Benzie. That's not including our partners. About a third of that is earned income. So there's program space and rentals and the services that we provide, like fiscal sponsorship. And then about 2/3 of it is from private contributions.
Okay.
We're trying to rebalance the equation away from grants, at least to support Grow Benzie proper. Of course, all of these initiatives are supported by state, federal, local grants. But what we're looking to do is rebalance the equation for Grow Benzie, not to rely on grants, but to have consistent funding. So we can have, 4 constant employees that we're not always worried about, as not most nonprofits do. Where will the money come next?
Those private contributions, are those sustainable?
Well, we've only went up. So every year we've improved our private contributions. This year we won't have the Benzie Bayou, which is our annual fundraiser. We usually generate between $20,000 to $30,000 there. We didn't have parking. So the Alberta Land Holding Company owns both sides of the waterfront park in Alberta. They no longer allow parking on that property. That's the piece that was just secured by, or looking to be secured by the Conservancy.
2 other questions. What's your organization's role with the Human Services Collaborative?
So we're the backbone organization for that. It originated before Grow Benzie was in place, but that is where the Benzie bus came from. So it's a collaborative body, 20 to 30 organizations that pay membership dues. Sarah May is the coordinator. She's presented to you before. It was under Central Wellness. And then Grow Benzie is actually a product of a collaborative effort from the Human Services Collaborative. So instead of being with Central Wellness, they decided that wasn't a program, especially when it was not refunded by the state level anymore. It was a great opportunity for Grow Benzie to step into that role. So we're the fiscal sponsor, as well as providing program space and grant writing.
And your role with digital equity?
So we've been supported as the digital task force, and Merit worked with the EDC. We had hired a contractor, Jackie Lucky Borazan, a year ago to help lead that on a local level. Mitch Shapiro obviously is a state expert, but we were able to bring together almost 50 letters of support and help with that grant. And then the digital equity piece that we worked with Merit was to convene. This was a cross-sector task force to recognize where the needs were for digital equity. There's 2 parts of what the federal and state funding does. One is infrastructure. That's what Cherry Capital Communications and EDC helped with. That's 4,000 new homes with wires going, glass wires going down the roads. Digital equity is for making sure that rural communities primarily understand how to use the internet, in full capacity compared to maybe urban areas that already have high speed. So there's 5 program areas that we're working on now with the Mitten expansion, or the Mitten grant coming up. That's cybersecurity, health. There's 3 more big ones. So we've since hired Jackie as a full-time employee. So she's helping coordinate the Benzie Broadband Initiative as the local support person.
For the benefit of the board, as I remember it, the EDC hired Mitch Shapiro, or this board hired Mitch Shapiro. Then we gave him the latitude to seek out resources in order to move the process along. Did he contract with you guys? Is that it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. As a local expert for systems approach and convening.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Josh, if I could. What can you do for us and what can we do for you?
I'm glad you asked.
That's why you're here.
We would like to ask for $10,000 to go towards general operations. And what's going to happen even before that is we've secured a grant with Rotary Charities to work with our top 5 initiatives, including Benzie Broadband, including the collaborative body, early child care, Best Benzie County, and Benzie Area Youth Initiative. And that includes creating a communication piece that can be held internally for stakeholders. So when we have these convening bodies like the Benzie Area Youth Initiative, they have churches, they have community mental health, they have this high school principals, they have counselors. How can we communicate internally so we know where the resources and assets are, what's happening internally? we're working on that. So that's going to be a direct, you're going to have a, maybe quarterly, an update for every one of those five initiatives. And then externally, we're working on how do we elaborate or develop external communications for somebody like my dad who wants to have internet, and he'll call me because I'm the guy to go to. He knows I'm working on internet. How do we get that information out to the public? And so we're working on two pieces of communication internally with stakeholders for each of these initiatives, and externally. So that's going to be a direct result, not of that contribution from the county that I'm asking for today, but we're proactive in working, knowing what your needs are, and a big one is communications. Ultimately, too, we'd like to work with Katie and the board, and potentially the EDC, and even the Chamber of Commerce with shared staff such as grant writing. So at this point, each one of those initiatives would have to apply for either a seed grant of $5,000 or $10,000 to get a part-time grant writer, to get a part-time grant. And if we can find enough money to pay a full-time grant writer for Benzie County, we can go after the billions of dollars that are out there that are just, just kind of hanging out there. So at this point, I'm going to be leveraged with your contribution. I'm able to communicate that directly to local foundations. We can put that on grant applications to say that we have our local county government support financially to apply for some of the big grants coming from the state and federal level.
Do you think your application scores higher if you get county dollars?
I believe so. It depends on the grant, but the way that Sarah Lucas and the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity have been doing it, they are looking for collaborations. And so Grow Benzie scores very high because we already have multiple sectors under one roof as one hub. So you're already participating in the Benzie Area Youth Initiative, Best Benzie County, Human Services Collaborative. So our county government has already put us, in terms of involvement, has already, moved us up the ladder. But the reason why these state and regional organizations are looking at Benzie County is because of county government engagement with social services.
Doesn't hurt that Sarah has connections to this region.
We're very, very close with Sarah Lucas. In fact, we just received a grant to help build out some of our capital needs at Grow Benzie with a relationship with Traverse City. But they're watching closely. The other part that we're working on with that network is their prosperity. They're building prosperity networks in the state. And so we've already reached out, since we don't have a zoning administrator, we've reached out specifically to township and village leadership to get around the table to make sure that we can wave the flag for Benzie County when they say, okay, who needs what? We're ready for that.
Josh, I appreciate your background on Grow Benzie. I didn't know any of that. So that was very interesting. So it appears you have a vision in your head of what this relationship would look like between Grow Benzie and the county based on contribution from the county. Would you be able to put that pen to paper so we could see it? And we would need a guide to know what the return on investment was as far as deliverables. Do you have an idea what that would look like? Is that something you could provide?
We absolutely could. So the reason why I'm asking today without having that presented is that we don't have that staff yet. So I could, and then that would take me away from the other work that we're doing. So my objective and our objective is to have your support. But once we have a fund development person in place or a grant writer in place, it's going to free me up to have more time to do the development like this. So whatever you're looking to have, I'm happy to give, but I'm also here transparently saying that we are looking to get money in order to leverage more money. Thursday, we have a big presentation at the Garden Theater in front of a lot of foundations and local funders. So that sort of thing, it's just always emerging and always happening.
At Seabury.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm happy to drop whatever you would request.
I'm just wondering how as a prosperity incubator, the grant writer would be available to most of your entities, right? Everybody that you serve as well as the county. So it would be interesting to know what that arrangement would look like as far as how much of that person the county could utilize for whatever contribution,
Absolutely. And it's all made up right now.
And we wouldn't want to be asking for more than we were entitled to, of this person's resources.
Sure.
It would be something that's supposed to benefit a lot of different entities, right?
So we work with the Community Economic Development Corporation of Michigan, CEDM, Luke Forrest is actually Benzie resident. We have a volunteer manager coming in as a AmeriCorps Vista. We could also do the same thing with a grant writer. That's one example of where we could bring in a grant writer for low cost. We could also do partnerships with some of the initiatives that have other grant money coming in and leverage that. So when I say that I'm very available to make a drawing or an illustration of where it would work, we don't know until the resources are there. It's always very much emerging into, where we're going to put our energies.
So this concept of prosperity incubator, have you seen a model that's more advanced than where you are? Is there an actual vision of what you're trying to achieve that's in operation that you kind of look to? What was your timeline and how did you get to this point? What does that look like?
Yeah, the big one is a fiscal sponsorship. So the emerging trend across the country is fiscal sponsorships, particularly in rural communities that need some sort of initiative like the Benzie Welcome Corps to have an outlet for grant funding. So that's where it really came up to play. Allied Media Project, if you want to look that up in Detroit, is a great example of a fiscal sponsor for media examples or media projects. The only other similar model that people can relate to is a community foundation or a United Way, which is typically rural, urban or micropolitan, where it's 5 counties or 10 counties, but it's not program based. So what we're doing is a little bit of mix of what United Way offers with their dental program is a full on, here's the program. Here we're helping low income folks have access to dental care. That's a program. They also offer some fiscal sponsorship for certain nonprofits, but there's no one that's taking a systems approach like this as much as we are. In fact, the Attorney General visited here on Friday, and when she toured Grow Benzie and saw the illustration, she did the same thing everybody does. I go, oh, that makes sense. And why are there not more of these? There should be one of these in every county. So we're pretty excited about the development, but there's really no hard model to show these collaborative bodies in rural communities that aren't based in, say, Traverse City. So that's what we're really trying to do. We have great relationships with those organizations, but the reality is when the feds pay the state and the state looks around the prosperity zones and then Traverse gets the money, we get a meeting and they come out and they give us flyers, and then we have to give them our information so they can get more money for the staff in Traverse City. What we're trying to do is just be a little bit more organized on a county level so that 5-county early childhood initiative will give us money. And United Way did. United Way supported us. The Grand Traverse Regional Foundation now has given us money. Rotary Charities has given us money. So we're pretty excited that we're creating a model, that we're getting input from some pretty major entities with good experience. But we also recognize that there's some unknowns about shared staff or convening. Even when we were doing the studies, we'd reach out to foundations and they'd say, well, we don't fund convening. Well, we're doing it properly where we're being really efficient. We're not just showing up for meetings. There's an execution style that we're really refining.
Okay. Is there any way we can get your financial picture over the last few years, how you've grown? I mean, we always have these budgets and stuff.
Yeah.
So I can see, I'm always looking, this is not my money. This is taxpayer funds. That's always front and center with me. I want to see the benefit that we're going to be given. I mean, it's like any other product you sell, you give your best foot forward. Is there any downside? But I'd like to see a financial outlook
Sure.
and how it's gone over the years. Maybe I'm out of line, but I don't know about the rest of the commissioners, but.
We're getting to that point. And so something like that's what I'm most concerned with personally as the executive director. So we know that there's monies that come in. So even having someone present at the school, for $9,000 as a inspirational, stay off drugs presentation. What is the return on investment on that? How many kids are we keeping from using? Right? There's not very good metrics in terms of some of these social services. And so what we look at as a prosperity incubators, we want to have measurables in each one of those initiatives that we help. MyFi is a great one that's credited to the Best Benzie County initiative, so they can measure how many FAFSA forms are filled out, That's a separate study, but MiFi says, well, vaping is up. Or feeling belonging in the schools is up. So that's a measurable outcome for that particular initiative. So we're working on formalizing each one of these initiatives to where they have a metric that they can form to show you as potential funders, we need $1,000 or we need $2,000. Here's where we have a dashboard to measure that success. And then for Grow Benzie, same thing, except we're just kind of holding it all. And so I'm able to do that. We're working on that now as we build staff. I'm excited to show that how we're getting off grants, and how our private contributions have gone up and how local foundations are now really paying attention because it's a different approach and we're actually moving the needle.
I'd like to see your growth over the years.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. You brought up a couple of things. Like the speakers, motivational speakers. I mean, if the guys don't end up in the jail up here, we really have nothing. If the kids aren't using drugs or anything and the motivational speaker did it, you can't do a metric on that.
So with
Hope it
Katie's,
reached out, yeah,
with Katie's support, so that she's part of the Benzie Area Youth Initiative. So
Mhm.
we gather and we say, well, what are the needs? And if the principals say we need a motivational speaker because that's what the kids react to, we
right.
have that. We have the data. Now, the key here is when that MiFi is filled out in 2 years, are those 9th graders now coming back in their 11th grade year when they take that survey?
Right.
Is there less use of substances?
Mhm.
So that's the importance of this perpetuity of us having funding as a backbone organization, because then we get to measure that
And that's what
versus just winging it every year. Go, hey, we need some more money.
you're asking for funding in perpetuity, I believe. If I'm not.
I'm looking to
mistaken.
get on your radar with $10,000 and then continue the relationship and figure out a closer relationship potential with the EDC, potentially with these other initiatives that we already support.
Thanks, John.
And
Mhm.
I think if I understand Gary's question, this is what I hear. You're looking for success stories, things that have come through your incubator that have become successful businesses. And then maybe those businesses like Role Model get sold as a successful business. Is that what you're asking, to see kind of that history? Because you.
Yeah, I want
have
to see
that.
this. I want to see some of the progression over the years. I don't know financially how they started out. I
Right,
understand how they started out, but I don't see it on paper how they grew and where they spend their money.
and you've
and
got
everything
that,
else.
Josh. You've
Right.
got all that information, so he can tell you about Role Model. He can tell you about the fellow that just opened the storefront, the Pepper.
Oak Creek Farm,
what
yeah.
He did.
Mhm.
I mean, so all of these are there, and the thing about it is and then the food trucks. Which now have become kind of high end, your gourmet food trucks, they're not roach coaches anymore. So you do have that information.
We do.
Which is
So,
there.
and if
So-
we had more support, and particularly working with the EDC, just in food in general, there's a lot of farms in
Yeah.
Joyfield Township that need a succession plan for new farmers.
It's part of the agribusiness, which is
Agribusiness.
our,
Yep. The
We
food.
need new markets, period.
Yep, exactly. So the food trucks entering come through Grow Benzie.
Yep.
We connected with Steve Bradley in Frankfurt to help him get started
Right.
with the new food truck space. One of our food truck managers is now managing that space. Coal Creek Farms now opened up a retail location and they sell their private label hot sauces up and down the coast. They sell them
Correct.
online. So if we could have someone just focusing from the EDC on food supply chain,
agri-food.
then that would be a
Yeah.
measurable impact that would be a reflection of the county's support, at least with the EDC piece.
Correct.
They have,
Yep,
Just want to see it.
I want to see it.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Josh.
Any other questions for Josh? Thank you, Josh.
Always available. Thank you.
Thanks. Now we're coming up to our topic that we all are really anxiously waiting to get going on. The discussion of the trial balance.
Well, if we could go into the draft budget first, there's a few staff persons here who have to get to some meetings. So if that would be okay with everybody, we can start with the spreadsheets first.
I don't have mine.
You don't have the spreadsheets?
No, but that's
Are they in
okay.
your mailbox?
It
Yeah.
might be in your mailbox.
So it's a good place for it to be.
You don't want
Sure, if we're gonna be looking, I didn't know we were gonna be looking at it. I thought we were looking at the trial balance.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start with Carly Bailey, first with the child care fund. She doesn't have many drastic changes to hers by any means, but it's good to get her in front of you to talk about all the good things that her and her office are doing.
Which spreadsheet is it?
What do you want to start
What
with?
color are you?
292?
Yep, we can start with the 292, which is the childcare fund.
So that is going to be
White and blue.
white and blue,
Okay, what's the spreadsheet's title?
292. It should be.
80.
Hold on.
80.
I'm looking.
Okay.
It's on the third page of this one.
So some of her fund is in the general fund, which is going to be the pink paper. And then 292 is on its own, and for your purposes. And it's called joint court related.
Thank you.
Yes.
But you color coded these so I can find them.
I'll share with you.
Yeah, so it's a white with blue, see?
Oh, okay. It's in here somewhere. I'm looking under that one. No, that's too.
Where's it at in the general fund?
Page of that one.
This one?
Yep. Third page.
All right, go ahead, Shannon.
Well, hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So if we are looking at the child care fund, no major changes at all. If anything, we went down a little bit when we were able to look at what we're actually using to what has been asked for the last couple of years. The only new line item that I am asking for is $4,000 to be used for assessments. And that is because the state of Michigan is rolling out their juvenile justice reforms starting October 1st. So what that means is if we are going to receive a 75% reimbursement from the state of Michigan, we now have certain things that we need to do as a county. Those things include assessments. Lots of assessments based on any kid that is coming under the jurisdiction of the 19th Circuit Court Family Division. So what that looks like is a risk assessment when they first come into contact. So after we receive a formal petition from the prosecutor's office and a mental health screening. So those are things that we will have to purchase. We are using what is called the MJAS. It's the Michigan Juvenile Justice Assessment System. That is free that we're using from the state. It might not be the most effective, but it is the one that is being utilized by a lot of counties because it is of no cost. I am going to participate in a training or another assessment that more counties are using to see if that is better, if it's similar. So that's where I'm asking for that more money in the child care fund to be utilized. For the mental health screening, we are going to have to purchase that. The state is endorsing what is called the MAISY 2, which will be conducted by either myself, our probation officers, or our contracted social worker. We are also required to provide a dispositional assessment, which we use.
Can I stop you just a second? I couldn't be more lost.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you, I don't know what line item you're talking about. I don't know what page. Yeah, I've got this.
Okay.
Page 3, someone said.
Yeah,
First
page
column
3
is-
towards the bottom, 292000827. Change title to assessments. That's the $4,000 she's referring to.
Okay.
But I want to,
MGT
can I,
Contract?
and just bear with us. This is, I didn't know
Yep.
we were doing these today. I thought we were doing the trial balance,
It's
which
on-
was it.
Sorry. it's
Yeah,
on the
and
agenda.
so our first column is 21-22 activity, 22-23. The amended budget, this is actual activity and then requested.
Correct.
Okay, so the actual, so we've got revenues. And when I look at expenditures of 292 on the final page, it looks like the budget requested is 480,000, but the only actual expenses were 89,268. Am I reading this wrong?
Yes, because if you look at the very bottom, you're getting into a different fund.
Right, I think I'm still on 292. I'm on
As a
the,
part of that, the institutional cost. You want to
That
use
may
20
or may
grand,
not
it's
happen.
130. I
Yes.
know that can always change in a heartbeat,
right,
but
right.
that's
I
always
understand.
been a huge one to me.
I guess so. Why would a $4,000 increase be required if,
I don't understand.
okay,
She thinks she can shift it, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the bottom line is not up, but is an additional expenditure that she hasn't requested in the past. The reason why the bottom line isn't up is because, as you recall, the state changed the rules on our reimbursements and we went from 50 to 75%. Now the state is reimbursing that 75%, which helps our general fund, but with that is other costs that are associated. So while the bottom line isn't necessarily going up, there's different costs associated with the fund in general.
So I just added the 4,000 to cover those assessments in order to get the 75% reimbursement, which is the only change to the.
But you haven't asked for, from your total budget, you haven't asked for an increase.
No,
gotcha.
No,
And you've changed it from management contract to
assessments.
assessments.
And also, if they don't use it for the year, it goes back in the general fund anyway, correct?
You're talking about the transfer in?
I'm still talking about the institution.
Yeah, if it's not used, it stays where it is.
Okay.
and I know that that does seem confusing to see such a large number to what we have spent, and that is based on, you know, this idea that we could be seeing some very serious crimes, and we actually do have a very serious CSC that is coming under our jurisdiction in the next couple of weeks that we've already been asked by the prosecutor to look for placement. So it's kind of that, just anticipating the future. I'm not a fortune teller by any means, nor do I want to be, but I also want to be prepared for a worst case scenario. So that's where that larger amount
Having
comes from.
trouble getting facilities to take their.
That's always an issue in the last couple of years. Our probation officer, Kelly Robinson, I call her a detention whisperer because she is just phenomenal at finding placement when we really need it. So we've gotten really, really lucky at certain points. So yes, you know, she is absolutely phenomenal.
So point me to what you've actually spent, what you anticipate spending through this year.
That anticipation, that's also tough to determine just based on what we could see in the next couple of months in regards to new petitions.
I understand.
So like I had said, we do have a very serious charge coming through, which to find residential placement, at the most expensive end, it is $500 a day. At the lowest end, it's $250 a day at this point of time. So, when I talk about a serious offense, I tend to talk about a juvenile that is a repeat offender. So we're seeing numerous crimes committed without learning kind of a lesson. So that's what we are going to be seeing in the next couple of weeks. And for the safety of victims and the community, we've been asked to secure placement for this juvenile. So we're going to do everything that we can to do so.
Under 292-000-840, there's large amounts of monies appropriated with no expenditures. No activity at all, you know, as far as contracted services, volunteer coordinator, 27,000, state steward chargeback, 60,000, foster care, 5,000, foster care, 20,000. And there's no activity in these columns, but we're still allocating those large numbers.
So when it comes to the volunteer coordinator, so that is a position that we did have that is no longer, but I would hope to fill with a day treatment program. So that is something that when that day comes, coming back and asking for that. Initially, I wanted that to be in the next fiscal year, but with all of the reforms, I believe that it's most crucial to make sure that Benzie County is doing what we need to do to get that 75% reimbursement before we add any new staff or any new serious programming like that. When we come into the foster care, and the state ward boarding care, those are the things that I kind of have to have in place for those worst case scenarios. So those are when we have a neglect and abuse case that is also under a DL, a delinquent case. So we would call those like a dual child. If we have a severe enough petition where they've been removed from their parents and have to be placed in either a foster care or a residential setting and are also under juvenile court jurisdiction. So it is unfortunately one of those things that we hope not to see, but could happen at any time. And to have those funds rather than coming here and asking for them when it has to be, that placement would have to happen as soon as one was secured.
And we have
About-
been dinged by our auditors for cutting checks when the budget is not there. So we have to prepare for that check if we have to cut that check. And sometimes these happen rather quickly. And so there's not time to bring it before you to do a budget amendment, fix the budget. And then so we have to say, pay this institution for this child under extreme circumstances. And if we cut a check without the budget there, then the auditor dings us. So we're protecting ourselves in that sense as well.
I'm looking at totals over,
Mhm.
we've never even come close to
Mm-mm.
that amount, so. I guess, in my opinion, we could knock it down to about 250. And still be ahead of the game. And force you guys to come to us if you need it. I know nobody wants to. But when our past gentleman that was in this position, he always asked for the moon. I just don't know where to go, because I'm not seeing it in your past history.
And I
And
understand.
I don't see it in what you use this year. So,
Yeah, and it's like
we-
line items like mentoring, tutoring, we have been allocating $8,000 and there's no usage. So
And so that comes from like this year. And as I have been in this role now for 2 years with a maternity leave kind of in there that definitely messes with it a little bit. But I'm still learning and trying to understand how it has changed. So that is where we were able to look at some of the things this year, see that we haven't been using it. Okay, we're going to cut back. When it comes to the tutoring and mentoring, we have a phenomenal tutor right now. We do pay tutors. She is wanting to just use her time as a volunteer service. So that's just one example of sometimes we have this money, but there are just wonderful community members that are willing to give their time to these at-risk youth. So that's just one example of where we have money allocated, but thankfully the people that we're working with are doing something out of the goodness of their heart for the youth that we serve.
So this is the same discussion I had for the first 4 years that I was here. To Gary's point, you're asking for 480,000 in that particular category. In the previous years, you've not even broken 200,000. Looking at 292,000,970. That says totals for department 000. This is the,
yeah, I'm ready.
yeah, so this is the concern. We set that money aside for you. There's a need in another department that we can't fund because we've set this money aside for you, but then we don't use it. But the need that was legitimately out there didn't get funded because we committed the money here and never got used for the third time. I must have had that discussion several times with the previous department head.
Keep in mind, 75% of this budget is reimbursed by the state of Michigan. So when you talk about committing large dollars, you're only committing $60,000 of general fund dollars. The other 75% actually comes from the state.
So we're not committing 481,000.
No, your transfer in from the general fund is 60,800, 25% of the budget, because the state will reimburse 75% of this budget.
And is there a line item where I would see that 60,800?
Yep, it's the 292,000,699, and then it's in the 101 at the bottom, where it says transfer to
But
the
they're
top.
not gonna reimburse what we don't spend.
Correct.
So if we're only spending under 90,000,
25% of that number would then go from the general fund. We don't just move money up front. We transfer out as it's needed. So for instance, if you look at their appropriations from last year and it's 191.44. That at that time was a 50-50 split from the state. 50% of that would have come from the general fund.
So if you're looking at 191.44, that to me shows 22-23. That am I, I'm, because the
That-
column headings are only on our first page.
Yeah.
So that's,
So at that time, it was a 50-50 split. So, but now they've upped it to the 75-25. So now it's a 25-75 split. But at that time, it was 50-50, so the number was higher. Monthly.
They are monthly?
We had a lag there for a few months where Kelly and I were wondering where the money was.
Actually, that makes it worse.
Oh, okay.
Because you know you're gonna get that back every month. Need to appropriate that much money, like Art said. I don't know.
Ultimately, it's up to this board.
I know we argued
Is
with
there?
Cameron for years on that, and he just.
No, I just have to get it in by August 30th.
I have a hard time justifying that amount.
The other thing with this too is this budget does go to the state for
Mhm.
approval. So if you approve a lesser budget and then we do exceed that budget, we have to go through a new process with the state to amend that as well.
So we're, in our general fund, we're only appropriating 60,800.
Correct.
And we have all these items that are earmarked for a $480,000 budget. But 75% is coming from the state.
Correct.
If we use it.
What they just pay us up front.
They never paid
That'd be very
for
nice. That'd
anything.
be very nice.
They do that to the health department, then they claw it back.
And we as Benzie County Juvenile Court are doing everything. All the checks or boxes have been marked to receive that 75% reimbursement. So we are up to date on everything that will entail for the new reforms.
Guess I understand where you're coming. Talk about
Mhm.
later on, I understand why you do it.
Mhm.
I appreciate it. I wouldn't want anything to do with your job.
So the other half of Carly's talk today is in the general fund, which is pink paper with pinkish purplish lines. It's the thickest section. And that's going to be the 101,662.
616.
662.
Yes, so it's in the general fund. So the revenues are on the 6th page, and then much further back would be the expenditures.
Juvenile division, right?
Yes.
So this one, we actually took quite a bit out this year that we were not utilizing. So that brought us down to the 33,682. From last year where we were at the 58,507 or 67. So most of what we do comes out of that childcare fund so that we can get the reimbursement. So that is why that is our primary source of funding for the juvenile court. That is where the probation officer comes from, all of our services and the institutional care. So that is why that is so much higher, is because we get that 75% reimbursement.
This one looks easier for me to swallow.
This is the.
Yeah, but this is what you spend and this is, or
No,
this
no,
is what you
no.
earn.
This is 29,000 revenue. Right. And then further back is your
Okay.
expenditures.
So if I'm reading this right, you anticipate through the balance of the fiscal year of spending $12,000. And the budget request is for 34, just rounding everything. Is that
And-
right?
The 12,000 is currently.
That's your
So,
activity through this
yes.
fiscal.
Yeah, that's the.
So
So
we
if you
still
look
have,
at
Through
your
this fiscal
column,
year.
your furthest right column is what's requested for the
Right.
next coming. The one just to the left of it is the activity so far this fiscal. Then
It
that's
says
what's
through-
requested
it's-
for this fiscal. And then it's the activity for the 2 prior fiscals before that. Last year you asked for multiple years of activity.
It says through 9/30. It doesn't.
Date when I printed all these for you last week.
Okay, that's important to note.
So- So that would maybe look a little different than when we are looking at that 292.
Yeah.
So yes,
So-
that's
so
just.
you
into
really
this
plan
The
on
report
spending,
won't let me change.
you
the
really
date.
plan on spending $59,000
Correct.
Yes,
and you're budgeting for 34 for next year.
yes, because we were able to bring down some things that we saw we were not utilizing. So that is what we went through this year, and we had money allocated that we had not used, so then we took it away.
And that's money coming out of the general fund.
That is correct. This is the general fund piece of it all.
And help me understand what I'm looking at in this. What is the source of? fund
So
for this?
that is the childcare fund. That's a completely separate program that's reimbursed at 75% through the state. They try to charge reimbursable. These are not reimbursable costs to this department, and so they're in the general fund that we pay for to provide the
This is
service.
preparing for worst case scenario.
Absolutely.
We get
Yep.
a family or a group of troubled children that need this funding, so you're just kind of shooting for the moon, so to speak, because you don't have a crystal ball.
Absolutely. It's a
And-
wonderful way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so let's just say that we had 2 youth that got a hold of a firearm that was not theirs and they did something horrific. We would have to find placement for those 2 youth immediately to keep the community safe, keep themselves safe, keep us safe. That one instance of securing them under our court jurisdiction could be $200,000 that we're looking at to place them. So yes, it is a large amount of money. That detention stay is also reimbursable by the state as well. But that is why I ask for these large numbers so that in the idea that we need to keep our community safe, we have the money to be able to go to these detention centers to ask them to house these youth.
And we had one year where unexpectedly, we had a family of maybe 4 to 6 people that suddenly had to be in the some wrongdoing.
Absolutely. Yes,
And I have to imagine that over the years doing this, the state's gonna approve
yes,
this amount. They anticipate that this could be a possibility. And
absolutely.
that's why you don't go for say more.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, and the state process as well. So I do this budget and then I have the state side. So they have seen this amount, they've seen over the years what we've used. And so it's already at a pre-approval state level. So,
or you've had to hold our hand through all this.
no, it's okay. I'm still learning it as well. So I absolutely understand.
And the big thing, this is,
State end of it. Seems like he came to us early before we even did this.
oh, there's a different signing for another thing that you usually come to us. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
so-
It's
yeah.
something a little different.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So if you went to the state with a lesser number,
Mhm.
but then you exceeded that number,
It would be the whole budget would have to be amended first before we'd see any reimbursement.
So that was what
So-
I was gonna say
Which
next.
we would have to do our end anyway, because 60,000 is it's
Mhm.
25% of 240.
Right. It
So
makes things a lot harder if we undermine what our thought of the budget is and then have to try to change it later because we exceed it. That process is much more difficult than getting that higher number approved.
Yes. And it is those worst case scenarios. And very fortunately, last year, we didn't have those incredibly severe cases. So it's one of those things to be thankful that we don't even reach that number. But that number is there, given a worst case scenario where our number one priority is keeping this community safe.
The way I'm looking at it is we're putting aside $60,000 for like an old crap situation.
Thank you. That's
Do
good.
we share our childcare? Is this joint with Manistee?
It is
Our
not.
court system?
Not this funds, not the
Not this fund,
292,
this is
but the
just us?
general fund activities are shared.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
But this fund is Benzie specific. The 292 is Benzie specific.
So I get to
And
do
is
this twice.
Manistee side of this comparable?
Yes, absolutely. We have one more probation officer in Manistee, so it is higher because of those wages. Other than that, it is almost exactly the same. And I'm asking for that same little increase for the assessments in Manistee as well. So,
Looks like we amended the budget this time. I don't think quite a bit. Right? I'm looking at that wrong.
Oh,
324.
well, in,
Looks like it was asked about 27 and we ended up at 60.
so I did ask for the increase last year for the institutional care. And that is when I started realizing that what used to be $175 a day was now $250 a day. If we have to use an out-of-state detention center, which thankfully in Benzie County, we haven't had to use. In Manistee, we did have to. And it was for 4 weeks, it was $30,000.
so I think what Gary's talking about, and we had talked about it too, it was the recording services, the
Oh,
circuit
yes.
court had the, thought and intention of hiring an additional person that never came to fruition.
So we removed that.
Right, so that's
Yeah.
why it's removed from this year's budget and the general fund. That position was not filled and we're not sure it will be. Any other questions for Carly? Otherwise, she's driving to Manistee.
Do this in Manistee right now.
I get to do this tomorrow morning in Manistee, but we
Well,
have.
good luck. Say hi to Jeff.
Good?
All right.
Thanks, Carly.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Next, we're gonna call up Donna from Central Wellness, because she also has to get back to Manistee. Central Wellness is in the general fund as well, and actually the expenditures are on the same page as juvenile. So it's a 101,649.
Hello, so I'm Donna Neiman. I'm the finance officer for Central Wellness, and in developing our budget this year, we're requesting, our budget request for Benzie is $177,616, which is actually $1,389 less than it was last year. Our funding request is a result of two statutory requirements. One is the maintenance of effort and the other is the local match drawdown obligation. The maintenance of effort is the county contribution that is required from both counties. The amount is $190,603 for both counties. This is the amount that was established, that was funded in 1980. And with this, when the counties contribute this amount at this level, maintain the level from 1980, what that means for us is that we can bill third-party insurance and keep it as local. And so that's a way that we can build our fund balance and provide other community services through local funding. The other one is the local match drawdown. And that is the local match requirement for the Medicaid that we pay and then get more Medicaid drawn back to expand our budget and to be able to provide services. There have been some changes within that, a reduction of that, which just allows us this year to just include the jail services, the jail worker, instead of a separate contract. In the past, we've had a separate contract for that, so we're rolling it into that appropriation and we're able to just provide that. The third thing of this is the state local facility match, and we're able, because we can bill third-party insurance and keep that as local, we're able to cover that. So my anticipated cost for the state facility is $120,000 for next year, but again, I think we can cover that with our third party, so we don't need that from the counties. So total request for Benzie is $177,616.
Am I looking at this correctly? There's really only I look at 3 line items.
Two.
Then-
Last year it was split out, so if you're looking at historical information, you might see the contract separately. The jail contract, which last year was $62,224. This year that's rolled into the appropriation.
Nothing under contracted services?
Correct. 'Cause it's
What was
now
that
moved.
again? Why did we pay for that previously? And we're not now?
That was split out as we were increasing, over the last few years, we were increasing the maintenance of effort and we're contributing to that piece of it. And then we broke out the jail as just a separate contract so that we could provide that service. Also, the maintenance, the local match drawdown obligation is one that the state is looking at, and that is going down. And so we have some room there then to maintain that level and include the contracted services in there. We don't have to.
Drawdown, didn't the drawdown have like a 4 or 5 year plan?
It did, and it stalled. Yeah,
And it's stalled.
Yeah.
Okay, because.
it went down twice and now
And
it's
then
kind of,
nothing.
yeah.
Okay.
So, and Chip's been working hard to get that and others to get that restarted so that it eliminates it.
Felt like something stalled, you know.
Yeah.
Any questions for Donna?
Down, that's the right direction. Yeah, thank you.
Good, thank you. What do we want to go with next? Dan Barczewski, would you like to come up so you don't have to hold you here all afternoon? Dan Barczewski is the chair of the EDC board that we have here in Benzie. You will notice in the general fund, there's economic development activities, a separate department now within the general fund versus having an EDC enterprise fund. We're not really doing any enterprise activities, so it didn't make sense to keep it separate. So it's within the general fund. You will notice that it is a bit higher of a request than in the past.
Where can we find it?
Yeah, we're sorry.
You're talking about something I can't follow you now.
To make health pages. So it's on page 5 of the pink. So it says economic development activities, that's the retire, and 728, 101, 728. So on page 5 is the revenue side of it, and then towards the end, 101, 728 is going to be the expenditures. Got it?
Nothing in there, it must be.
Well, that's revenue. So towards, it's actually the third to last page.
Third to the last page? I
Third to the last page is
thought
the
you said the
actual,
5th page in.
well, that's the revenue side of it.
In the pink.
In the pink,
That's right.
although you have some white in yours, sorry. Oh. So, Dan is here to talk about why the increase in the request. Historically, we have transferred out about $10,000 to EDC for their activities. But for this year, the committee as a whole had a pretty good discussion about why they want to see a larger allocation towards the Economic Development Committee specifically. And the chair, Dan Barczewski, is here to kind of talk about what the committee talked about in the request and why.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Start with the story. I know you're burned out of hearing from us folks. I coached in a rural town for one season that hadn't made the playoffs in 14 years. And I was told the kids weren't competent. I was told that league they played in was too tough. I was told that from the coaches that they didn't have, they're very critical of the facilities and that they didn't have the support they needed to make things happen. They kind of gave me a hard time when I suggested we might be successful. And in 14 years, we finally made the playoffs that one season. Since that time, they've had a significant winning record and made the playoffs 4 out of 5 seasons. The reason I'm telling you that is it seems like Benzie's turned a corner as a county to me. Originally, the last time I spoke to you, I was asking for help, the RDOF funds for the assistance with the broadband. Because you did that, we received $2.8+ million in Robin funding. We saw Cherry step up in Malone and assist with some additional private dollars. They estimate by the end of 26, we're going to have 5,100 locations. It'll have been brought past with over 1,400 unserved or underserved individuals and families being connected. By 2030, they think they're going to have the entire county 100% connected to fiber. It all started in this room with you. So I'm just telling you that these little decisions are big. We've had some good successes as an organization. We've had a bunch of people come in, crosshatch, minor grants to fund farmers, City of Frankfurt, and potential work they're doing on their infrastructure. So there's been a disconnect at times there, but I think there's some good work going on down there that'll help the county residents. That's what I'm most concerned with. Senator Allen, Jason Allen came here and gave us funding sources for the county. I prefer we were self-sufficient, frankly, but we're not. We have to get there. And so this is all part of me asking for your help. There's an incubator that I'm trying to talk everybody into down there. It's hopefully that'll happen for the kids, education and jobs. Venture North was here. We also had a presentation by the former head of the CEO of the MEDC. His name's Steve Arwood, works in Traverse City, connected all of the counties there and put forth an economic development package for the entire region of the Upper Peninsula. He'd like to work with us. We also had Warren Call and Traverse Connect come here. They also made a proposal and would like to work with us. Both, I think, are viable sources, and the EDC would need to make a decision on that. But under our current budget, we can't proceed with the money folks have set aside for us. It's an investment in what I would consider our future as a county. And I would say that, it's kind of this thing that's been in the mothballs, and we've all been wondering what's ever going to happen out of this. I'll tell you, there's a lot that's happened. A lot has happened in the EDC. The different people that have taken interest in this state. Our proposal was number 11 out of over 154 applications that they received for the county. We're considered one of the top rural counties in the state of Michigan for broadband. Broadband isn't just stringing cable to our houses, even though we all would love that. It's a business step forward that puts us into the 21st, 22nd century. And so I'm going to cut that off, cut short. But we have some future needs. We need to get a facilitator, consultant in to help us create a vision that we can express to you folks. Say, this is what we think this county is capable of doing as a community. And so we need your backing to do that. Without it, we are just going to be in mothballs, and it'll be an empty suit sitting at this having meeting. I think that would be a waste of all of our time. So the request for the additional funds literally is to pay a consultant to come and show us and lead us into having a good economic development strategic plan as a county that is achievable. It's a stretch, but it's achievable. I mean, that's how you want to try to run it. You don't want to put it, so we call it moonshot versus the stars. You want to have it be achievable. So I'm asking you, consider helping us to fund this position. I do believe we have two very viable groups willing to assist us. And with the additional funding, that's where that'll go. If we don't need it, we won't spend it, and it'll go back in the general, but I think we're going to probably need it. If we're going to get the A players in to help us from an A rural county, which we can become, I really believe that, then we're going to need your help.
I'm going to add my 2 cents if I could, Dan.
Sure.
You know, Bob, how your passion is the VA. My passion is economic development. We've been messing around with this for 25 years. In the past, our existence was all around the revolving loan fund, which I think we all know went away to Venture North. We have a group of very talented people sitting at the table at the EDC that are all asking themselves, what am I doing here? Because their vision for the county is big. And I mean, we're talking about things like, what is the value of a business park or an industrial park or an incubator down in Frankfurt that really could get some legs in the next couple of years? We got zero budget to work with. We got nothing. So we can't even bring in professionals to help us along. Dan's brought in, and Katie's brought in some folks that have given us a great start of a roadmap. but they aren't gonna do the rest of it. You know, that's what they do for a living. And we're not looking for this to be on the backs of the county indefinitely, but we need help getting it started. We might even be looking at private-public partnerships, which we're learning not only are successful, but it gives us a leg up in attracting grant money and potentially foundation money, private dollars. But we need seed money to work with is the bottom line.
Critical. It's absolutely critical, and I think private, public is the only way we should consider doing it as a county. I really believe that. And the reason being that we can't attract grant money if we don't. And if the person isn't incented correctly, they have to have an incentive to grow themselves and their organization in order for us to grow. And so that would be, I would think, part of the plan, but I'm not the expert. The other two groups might be better at addressing that with you.
Well, Dan, I would add this, and you've heard me say this before, years ago, when I was frustrated with where the county was at, and they were contracting it out at that time to Traverse City. Charles Blankenship, who was a well-respected in the EDC environment, finally said to me, until you help yourself, I can't help you. And now we're at the point where we've got the players at the table, so we've got the talent. Now we need the resources, and we're gonna bring you back a product. It's not gonna happen in a year or two, but we'll bring you back a product.
Well, that $1.5 million that this group appropriated towards that had a massive return. You're at $8 million, including your investment. And so I would expect the 60 or 50 or whatever, 80 we put in there.
90.
90, awesome.
Well, 50 of that though is for the broadband specifically, because as you recall, we allocated that over so many years. So every year I budget $50,000 for that venture.
That's Mitch Shapiro.
Correct.
Right.
So,
I'm sorry.
but within the general fund, $90,000 total for broadband and economic development activities is budgeted in the general fund that has been given to you as a balanced budget.
So there's $40,000 to move this thing forward, not 90.
That is correct.
Can I ask about, and I want to make a comment after I ask this, but the per diems, I didn't think EDC could receive per diems.
It doesn't say anything about per diems on 17.
Where do you see it?
Or am I looking at
Parks and
Parks
Recs.
and Rec?
You're
Am I
looking at
down?
Parks and
Okay.
Rec.
All right.
728
Sorry,
is the
I
EDC.
jumped my thing. And I would say I appreciate your commitment, Dan, and I think you're exactly right. We can't be a county without an EDC, and if we're gonna have an EDC, we have to get behind it. And I appreciate you being bold enough to come forward and ask for some funding.
So you're thinking what, 150?
Definitely.
Okay, the request is now 150. Do I hear 160?
Oh, wait a minute.
I know that the county struggles financially. And so it's hard, but it's not wasted. This will not be wasted. It'll be put to work.
At least
And
they
that-
generate income too, right?
Well, but not in the first year, it's not gonna,
I know.
but it will improve the tax base, I promise. That's where the real money is the improvement in the tax base.
Bingo.
In our community.
We have to stop.
infrastructure too, beyond broadband, right?
Yes, but so there's the two thought processes is broadband is a business park, and then there's the other side that it's a practical business park that we need infrastructure. We're gonna need a place for people, build it, and they will come as course comments at meetings. So I think we have to have another investment. I think it's going to be worthy of it. If it's not, you'll fire us. And we're gone. But I'm telling you, I told the group the last week, I think I freaked some people out that I won't repeat exactly what I said, but I said, this is gonna make it, period. I won't be involved with something that isn't successful for the folks here. I'm here asking for your help.
Yeah.
And we need it. So,
If we get a project off the ground, we could very well be back, but we'll be able to explain to you what your return on investment is gonna be if we need additional money. Because 40,000 is gonna get us a little bit there. I thought it was 90,000.
There's notes, and in the note it says broadband previously approved.
Yeah, I see it. You know, as you see what you want to see, right?
I know you did. Thank you, Dan.
yeah, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Oh, were you?
Should find more.
I jumped down the road.
They want more, don't they?
What? All right, who would you guys like to move on to next? Corey, the sheriff, Kelly, Paula? Who wants to be next? Kelly, come on down.
Where are we
Where
at?
do we find her?
So Kelly's within the general fund mostly, 101,253.
One, two. This is getting a little easier, I guess.
Yeah. We get next to you like.
Jeez.
I don't know. Okay. So, I have them pulled up the general fund,
Okay,
just the
all
general.
good?
Yeah.
All right, well, mine's gonna be about the chief deputy wages. They were not part of the reclassification that happened this year with HR. And if we remember back in September of 2022, I was a chief deputy then. You guys gave the chief deputies a 13% raise to get us where we needed to be with the in between everybody. And I just want to make sure that we stay consistent with that. And because my deputy got a raise here just in the last couple weeks, and then she's going to get a cost of living wage, and then she's going to get another increase, I want to make sure that the chief deputy stays in that percentage from her. If you guys remember what you guys did back in September of 22.
Oh.
No?
What I didn't follow is all these raises
Yeah.
that she's getting in the next year.
Well,
the
you
raises?
guys did a reclassification for all of the deputies and the other non-union. The chief
They all-
deputies, the chief deputies was not part of that. They were not allowed to be part of that reclassification, and you'd have to ask Jackie why. I don't remember the reasoning behind that. But because of that reclassification, it put my deputy into a 5-year step increase.
But with each bump of that reclassification in the motion, it says, and not to receive the rate, the cost of living raise for this fiscal year. I mean, I remember that being said.
Okay.
There
Well,
wasn't
for this
supposed to be-
current, but with this 10-1 is when they, when that, all that stuff starts. So they'll get it next time, but they don't get it now. That's how those motions are written. Yes, in this next budget, this current budget, things are not happening. That's how the motions were written.
What is the concern? The gap's gonna close again?
Correct. It's not, I don't believe it's a whole lot.
I think that.
Just to,
So the reason that the chief deputies were not included with the reclassification is because we're being told by our legal counsel that chief deputies are essentially the pseudo elected official. And as you know, with elected officials, once you raise a salary, you cannot change that salary while that person is in office. You can only change that salary upon election time. And so that, because of that, they urge you not to couple them with those union folks, but couple them with the elected official thought process there.
I thought we gave cost of living, whatever it went through with the unions, we gave those to the.
I'm finding it right now.
Except the.
We usually do.
are.
We usually do. We usually,
And the expenditures are in the back.
so typically what we do with the non-union folks and the elected folks is give them the same COLA that we agreed to in the union. Minus the Board of Commissioners, correct? So we have held true to that since I've been here. I don't know how long before that, but typically that is applied evenly across the board in the most recent years.
You're kind of saying the same,
I guess what are you
we
trying to
can't,
say?
we can't adjust our only right before the election for the following election,
Yes,
but we do it yearly on these.
chief deputies are technically considered classified as an elected official.
So
Therefore, you cannot decrease their salary. They have to inherit the old chief deputy's salary. But I'm saying if it's a new person, you can't decrease the salary, they have to inherit. So that's the issue with elected officials as well, is if you have an elected official who leaves mid-year, which ours do, because that's what they do, you cannot decrease that next person's salary. It's not allowed. You have to wait till the election year. Well, then you're pigeonholed in. Do you decrease an existing person's salary? Nobody's gonna do that. And a chief deputy, the chief deputy is treated the same. If they leave mid-election year, they must inherit that old chief deputy salary or have an increased salary, but law will not let you decrease that salary.
This looks like a Jackie problem.
Well, no, it's not. It's a me
No, it's-
problem.
Well, that's in statute, right?
I'm
It's
just.
statutory, and I
Yes, it
have the
is.
legal opinion from Cole Stoker that says the chief deputies are treated the same as the elected official.
Okay. Now, all I see is one line item for wages. Is that
We
right?
don't have a breakdown of.
That is
wages.
Yeah, we
correct.
don't.
So
No.
with the new chart of accounts, the wages are not broke out like they used to be. That's part of accounts change. So that wage line shows all three of the folks within the treasurer's office.
So 165,300 is what you expect to spend this year. And next year, you're asking to spend 167,500.
Possibly. I mean,
Is that right?
Yeah, so the
I believe that's
notes,
what
This is.
HR came up with.
so
So you're
the,
talking
Based on,
about,
I believe that's based on the 3% increase.
you're talking about $2,000 difference in wages. Total wages.
Yeah, for myself, I'm new. I'm good with the increase, with the COLA increase. Maybe next year I'll ask for a little bit more.
All right. It's, when you look at
So-
it that way, that changes.
no, you're looking at it wrong, Art. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Please help me out.
So the 165 is what's budgeted for this year. The
Uh,
167 is what the number that we put in there based on the 3% that was agreed to with one of our collective bargaining agreements. So we
Okay.
applied 3% across the board to be consistent.
Okay,
What Kelly is asking for is 5% on top of the 3%. So it'd be the 167.5 plus 5% for that chief deputy specifically. I can pull up that wage if you'd like me to
Maybe
and
like
do that.
2,500 bucks.
Let me do some math. for you.
Big for me.
so that 5% increase isn't reflected in there.
Right, so that.
In hard dollars, what are we talking about? That's what she's looking up.
Patience.
Just pushing her
Oh, I
on.
can't be able-
Hell, I didn't even know we were gonna do this today.
It's on the agenda and I
It's on
put
the
it in my
agenda.
email.
It is. Where?
Yeah.
Read
it's
the
on the
whole
agenda.
sentence.
It's on the agenda.
And
Oh,
draft.
And draft budget.
And you guys were given a.
No, I didn't see this before. I didn't know it was sitting in the box. I don't come up here every week.
So it's an additional 2580 for that one position. What is it? $2,580.
So about
And some change.
$5,000 from last year.
$4,771.
Well, no, that's just the chief deputy. The treasurer has a different wage. So the 2580 is for the chief deputy specifically.
And I'm just asking for the 3% COLA.
And so she's
So I'm
only
fine.
focusing on her chief deputy.
Yeah.
She's not factoring herself into that. So it's just the 2580
Correct.
additional for her department is what she's requesting.
On your medical insurance, does that reflect what we just approved today?
Correct.
Does.
Right.
Yes, we factor
Yeah.
that into this document, assuming that you would approve it.
Okay.
We would have prepared to change it if you didn't.
And why the big jump in the contribution of the retirement county share?
Okay, so that's super convoluted and how that works. So we have multiple divisions in the DB plan and then we have the DC plan. They're treated separately. The divisions in the DB plan are based upon the active employees left within that plan. So there's an unfunded liability amount within each division. So there's division 10, 12, 13, 14, and they all have an unfunded amount, okay? Within those plans, though, the amount of people active in those plans is shrinking. And how we apply it in the system is that total unfunded that's due for the year, we divide it by the active number of employees that are left on the book. And so it looks a lot different based on that. Also, because of our actuarial tells us how much we have to budget each year. And that factors in some of that as well, because that number does change each year based on what MERS tells us to budget. So not only do we have less people in those plans, so it's broke out a little differently throughout the general fund, we also have a change in numbers that MERS is telling us we have to pay.
And all three of us in my, yeah, and all three of us in my department have the DB plan.
But different divisions. So yes, people are drawing, but then there's less active folks within the different divisions as well. So when we're doing that accounting and applying it within the division, it gets, attributable to the different active employees within the different divisions.
Right.
Very convoluted for MERS.
Katie, offhand, just in round numbers, do you know how much of an increase there is that we're contributing to MERS next year versus this year?
For which plan?
Well, I'm thinking
Just
overall,
DB?
overall,
Oh,
yeah.
overall. So
Yeah.
overall, it's quite a bit higher. Because we budgeted an additional 100,000, you'll see at the end of the general fund to account for an additional payment because our unfunded liability keeps increasing. We've actually budgeted additional funds. So it's well over $1 million to MERS is what's budgeted across all funds.
And how would that compare then to what we're did this year?
This year was like 950,000-ish. So about 200,000 extra.
Okay, so somewhere along the line, that's got to get shared among all of,
And that's what we do. It's broke out among the active employees within each division. And over the years, Benzie County established many divisions. We have like a dozen divisions. And so it's a huge puzzle to break out who's where and when. And then that's how we budget it.
bottom line is that's out of Kelly's control.
Correct.
Mhm.
That is what that means. It's in
But I was
her
able to
control.
go through and reduce, I did some reductions from the years before, if you look through the rest of my budget there. I didn't think we needed to have that much money. So,
Yeah, overall, there's about a $24,000 increase.
yeah, which if you added that up, it's retirement
Yeah,
almost.
it's mostly retirement.
Right?
Anything
All
else?
right.
That's it. Thanks.
It is what it is.
Paula, you want to come up? So Paula is 101,711.
One, seven, one.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
The gel pen, write a check now.
A gel pen?
Can't, altered.
Oh, you can send me one later.
That before.
I've never heard that.
Restaurant. Great money check.
So my budget is a little hard to figure because pretty much it all is based on what real estate is going for. So you kind of have to watch real estate and guess. And so we did bump up the numbers a little, but not extreme. So I think we're gonna be okay on where we put them. The only couple changes is I did put some money back in that we haven't used in a long time. Was the 560 and then the 500 out of training. So there was a little bit I put back in. So the only real difference I'm asking for is I'm going just a little bit different than what Kelly did because on comparables, I show my chief deputy is at the highest wage in comparables. So I was just asking for her to get the COLA percentage. I'm asking for the 5% because I'm not even at the median wage on my wage. And I'm a working register. There's a lot of stress in the office with all the different laws we have, and we have the new legislation coming down with Daniel's Law. So our office will be the hub of all the privacy shielding, which our Fiddler company has in place. So once the requests start coming in, we'll get the training on it. I have to check everything that comes in and goes out with the two girls being new, but it can be a little stressful. We have a lot of new things I've seen in the 30 years I've been there.
attorneys are preparing documents we've never seen, and so I'll send them to our association. They've never seen them. So we have to be the ones to decipher. Do we take it? Does it meet all the requirements? What do we call it and how do we index these things? There's a lot of, a lot of decisions that get made and under 116 type of documents that we take in. So there can be a lot going on. We just had another new one come through this summer that there was transfer tax being paid on someone changing their names in their LLC. We've never seen this before. So we had to figure out how to charge transfer tax on which document. So another reason we call someone from our association, and hopefully we'll discuss some of this at our conference coming up, because these are all new things we're seeing I've never seen in 30 years. But I think it's all the money coming into our area, and this is what our association is thinking too. A lot of new things we're challenging.
But
Why
this-
is it you think that your contracted services for Laredo is gonna go up 5,000?
It did go up, didn't it? It
Mhm.
went up.
Yeah.
It already did. They lock us in for 3 years.
Oh, that's a fixed amount?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Not
it
based,
already
not
did.
based on anything
No,
other than
No.
what you've agreed on.
No, we have a multi-year contract and it spells out our payments.
And if we, Katie, if we were able to agree to these salary increases,
Mhm.
what would it do to the total request? Right now, I'm looking at a total request for expenses of 310,000. There must be something greater than that.
Are you talking specifically about Paula's?
Right.
So it would be, so she's requesting 5% for hers. And so based on what she's making now, it'd be an additional 3,300 in wages. She's not asking for anything outside of the norm for her folks, based on the comparables that were provided to everybody.
What does the longevity mean?
So certain staff here in Benzie County still gets an annual longevity check. That was done away with in 2011 or 15. I don't remember when. But those folks who were here and receiving longevity at that time still get longevity. And so Paula's been here longer than most. And so she does get an annual longevity check as well, in addition.
I think it adds up $30 each year you're here. I think they add $30 onto
To it.
each year.
So she gets a lump sum on her anniversary.
The figure of wages doesn't include the 3,000.
No.
It doesn't include the 2,080 for passport processing for the chief deputy, which I thought they already got.
No, that does include it. The 168,500, what is budgeted?
That's the 3.5. is
So
it?
no, that includes the 3% plus the dollar. But it does not include the 5% for Paula.
Right. And I don't get the dollar.
Correct.
But I still do passports and I still get certified.
You know,
So
I
her
don't
staff
wanna
is
argue with
that.
everybody, but that's a non-mandated service. You might have to get looked at in the future.
Katie, can I just make sure I understand this one right? The 3% CBA is included, the dollar passport is included, but the 3.5% for the chief, 3.5% for the chief deputy, and the 5% for the elected official is not in the calculation.
Is not, but Paula stated that the 3.5% is off the table. We're just focusing on the 5%.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Right.
Thank you.
Because
Well-
of the comparables.
Just to put this in perspective, there's about a $38,000 increase from this current year. Of that, $27,000 is not controllable.
Right.
It's insurance, it's the fee for your services, and what else did it see? In retirement.
Right.
I did put the 3 in.
So you're asking me for $11,000 increase. That's within your, that's discretionary. That's the way I look at it.
Sure.
And that includes that wage increase you talked about.
Yeah, and she's saying that she would like the 3.5 considered for Isabel, her chief deputy.
Just say she was at the top of her pay grade.
She is at the
What it
top of the
shows on now.
comparables.
Which Kelly's chief deputy is too. Or well, hers is a little under, isn't it?
Yes. So you guys have the salary survey spreadsheet in your email that has all the elected officials and their chief deputy wages for our comparables. There's also within there shows lowest, medium, highest, and then where Benzie falls on those scales as well. And that's what Paula and Kelly were referring to, is that spreadsheet that you guys have.
And the comparables that were provided are the ones that, I believe we had a discussion. I think we were talking about sheriff's deputy, like union agreed
Yeah.
comparables.
This one is much more extensive, but yes, we focus on those ones that are used for collective bargaining.
Yes.
But we included many others in here as well, just so you can see regional as well as our comparables. So this one's a bit more extensive, but yes. I won't take the credit. Lisa Segala put that one together. Yeah. Just say, hey, friend.
And we show, I mean, our transfer tax, we've already submitted 498,000 to the state, 73,000 in the county, just from January till now, which is up from last year. So I know we're gonna come in a lot higher than we did last year, just not sure how much. Our remote access is up right now as of $1,200, so I expect that to go up a little higher too as the year goes.
You're looking at the revenue side.
Mhm.
Let me understand this. You opened a conversation by saying your chief deputy is already at the highest end of her page, her peer group. Right?
That's what the form shows, yes.
Okay. But you'd like to give her 3.5% plus $1.
Well, that's cost of living. I assume that everybody's getting that, but
Well, it
So
says
she's
$1
off-
for passport processing.
Yeah, so we budgeted the 3% to be consistent with all unions, but based on your note, are you wanting 6.5 total or just an additional 0.5%? So we've budgeted that everyone's gonna get the 3% to mirror the unions. So, but you have 3.5 years. So is that 3.5 above the 3, or is that just a half above the 3?
for her. or-
Yeah, for her.
For her would have.
Just that.
Yeah.
So an
Okay.
additional 0.5% for the chief deputy, an additional 5% for Paula is what's being requested.
So you want an 8%, so you're asking for 8% overall for the elected official. Instead of 2% to equal the 5%.
What is your request? I don't know. What
For
your
her?
For you.
Oh, for me? Mine was
I'm just
5.
trying to go.
Okay.
Okay, but 5 in addition to the
Yes.
3, so you want 8 overall.
Oh, the 3.5 is for the worker and her.
I know.
No, we-
So if she wanted, so
No.
Half.
8% for the elected official, 3.5% for the chief deputy. What's budget is 3, so it's a different of 5.5% across the board. A different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
and why would we go even higher than the top of the pay chart?
I just thought that was the cost of living. Because she's been at this top of the pay chart and I didn't know that until I seen these comparables. So when I put in the 3, I had no idea about this.
Any other questions for Paula?
I'm gonna ask her about the revenue side of this. Are we not charging as much Laredo cost us?
Yeah, that chart I gave you shows we made 30,000 on them. We made 30,000 on them last year, so we get a kickback.
I'm looking at what the budgeted thing is. First one up here is revenue, right? Page,
Mm-hmm.
and back in 20, whatever the hell it was, 21, you got 45,000, 22, 23, you got 42. Projected at 30, well, it was amended. Projected activity,
Well, it's based
request
on,
is 38.
So
I
that
would
was,
think you'd be in the 40s.
that
with
was
your
our
revenue.
record year, the year that was the highest.
Oh, that one
out
that
of-
was?
and they're based on user fees, so we get a portion of the users. And so there was a record high year around the COVID time of people signing up.
Right.
Well, now we're getting back to more people coming to the office, so less folks are paying for this service and we get a portion of the service back. So that's why the change.
Now it makes sense.
I guess the way I'm interpreting that is that we pay $25,000 for the service and you collect about $51,000 from the user.
Mhm,
So you 100%.
right.
That's what
So
I
I know you see a lot of checks going out to Fiddler, but we're getting a lot of that money back. Yep. So,
Paul, I know that everybody works hard and does a good job, and we can make the argument about whether we should be doing passports or not doing passports. But when you've got an employee that's at the top of their pay grade and we're giving them a 3% raise, I think that's fair. Because everybody's gonna say they're worth more.
right.
And these are gonna be people that'll be at the middle of the pay grade.
Yeah, I didn't realize honestly that they were at the top of the pay scale. I would have liked that raise when I was chief deputy.
I know, right?
Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Tammy, do you want to go next? Or
Or
do you
I
want,
can wait till last because I'm here with you
you want to
guys.
do, yeah, you're here no matter what.
Duration.
All right,
Break.
Sheriff's Office or Corey, who wants to go next?
We take break.
Yeah, let's take one off.
We're taking a baby break.
Yep.
Okay.
You can't-
Alrighty, you're unmuted if we wanna
Started goes farther.
Okay.
share.
You understand, I don't care about you.
We're unmuted. So, just somewhat of a game plan. So obviously today's taken a bit longer and we've had a long day. So we're gonna try to get through central dispatch and the sheriff's office. And then hopefully the clerk's office, because hers is short. And then, if everyone can mark their calendars for a study session after the next regular meeting, which we wouldn't typically have, but we will. And we're gonna focus on the budget some more and hopefully really, hammer out the final draft so that I can present the true draft budget. So if everyone can plan on a study session after the next regular meeting, that would be great.
Perfect. I always plug it in.
Perfect. All right, so we're gonna go into central dispatch, which is yellow paper and pink lines. It's gonna have 259 and 261.
Little paper, pink lines.
You like that?
I think I got the wrong one. Yellow, blue lines.
You're talking- oh.
Oh, so for you, it should say central dispatch. Sorry, I forget that you're viewing it online.
I got it.
Okay,
Which
So-
one is?
it's yellow paper, pink lines.
Dispatch.
Farther down.
Dig deep, deep.
I'm second to last. There you go.
That's why I need.
Starting with 911.
Yep, so at the top is the 259 training fund. Everyone see that?
Yes, yes.
So the training fund is pretty straightforward and I'll let Corey go through the budget. And Corey isn't really requesting anything outside of the norm, but the reason we need to talk about his budget is for the same reason I've warned you of the last 2 years. We can't balance this budget without fund balance. So we need to figure out what we're going to do. We're already charging the max surcharge. The reason that we're okay every year is because we're never fully staffed. We are nearing that point where we're finally going to be fully staffed. Knock on wood. And then we have
dare
huge
you.
problems. I know.
How dare you?
So I'll let Corey go through the training fund and we'll go into 261.
So yeah, the 259 line is pretty straightforward. The state decides based on our number of FTEs of what's considered a, I can't think of the word at the moment. The state decides whether or not you're an appropriate dispatcher. You've been through the right training that the state requires. They designate you is the word, a designated telecommunicator. Based on that number of FTEs, they give you a certain dollar amount. So it's pretty flat for the most part over the years. We have seen a gradual decrease in that. But we know that it's going to be right around $8,400. So that's what that amount is. And then it's the same expenses. It's the same for training. That's the expenditure out of it. That's what we're allowed to use it for. Within that, it can only be used on certain trainings that meet the state's requirements and all of these different restrictions. So we meet that. We absolutely spend every single penny of that every year.
So just like the MCOL's budget amendment you did earlier today, same sort of training setup, but this is specific to central dispatch.
Yep.
So moving into 261, you want to go down that? Everything's pretty flat.
Yeah, for our 261, like Katie said, everything's pretty stagnant. It's just the same from each year. There's no specific increase other than the things that obviously increase each year. The approved wage adjustments, insurance costs, things like that. One thing that I do want to point out, because we've been talking about it quite a bit, is if you look at on the top of the second page called local surcharge, you'll see that the requested amount is a little bit above what we did this year. So we are actually seeing a small increase that's been consistent for several years, as you can see in the columns, in the amount of surcharge we're getting at the local surcharge level, that $3 per line. So I was comfortable this year finally with actually increasing, projecting what we're going to get in, because we've had 3 years of increased revenue. There is no way for us to audit that, as a reminder. I have no idea what they're going to give us. I can't look into a crystal ball and guess. So I go based on previous years. And since we've had 3 previous years of an increase, I think it's safe to say we'll probably continue on that trend. Once we start seeing it come down, we'll have to have a different discussion. The same goes with the state surcharge. So the state has a flat rate that they also assess on the lines. And then they divvy that out based on two different factors. One of them is a equal distribution among all of the PSAPs, is a public safety answering point, which is what we are. They do an equal disbursement of a certain amount of money to everybody, and then they do it based on per capita. Obviously, we don't have a high per capita, we don't get a whole lot. So that is projected what we are supposed to get. You will see it's an increase from last year because they increased their fee. I believe it is now at 75 cents and it used to be somewhere in the 60s previous years. So they also increased their fee, which means we get a little bit more. Continuing down the revenue line, we decided this year to change up a little bit for accounting purposes on how we track the different sources for what we call dispatch support. So you can scratch out in your mind on the 634 line item for SOR registry. We don't do that anymore. Since we moved into our new space, we no longer do that. That is the sheriff's department now. So that line item would be considered lien, and you can see in the footnotes there, the amount for lien is $24,558. I talked with Katie on the break here. That's what that dollar amount should be. If you add up those three dollar amounts in the footnote, it equals that 30,482. So since we decided to break them out to appropriately track it, that number just has to get updated. Just as a reminder for that, lien services, the things that we do, the workload for that surcharge cannot be used for that. It also cannot be used for animal control or specifically EMS transfers, meaning a patient transfer from Paul Oliver to Munson. We can't use surcharge money for that, but we still provide the service. So
I'm just curious, if you knew that you were adjusting that out of there, putting a line in, why did you leave it in there for presentation?
That was my
I didn't.
miss. I'm sorry.
that was kind of a last minute change
Yeah.
of trying to better track that. Because with that also, we ran into some other issues where it was budgeted, but the money wasn't ever moved. So at a previous meeting, you guys approved to move the money. So we're just trying to clean some of those things up. I guess I'll continue down through the bottom of that page. I don't really, that's all stuff handled by Katie's office
That's good.
and HR. If we move on to the third page there, there's really no increase specifically to anything out of the ordinary. I'll just point out where we put in some footnotes on some of the increases. So specifically under for line item 261-325-830. We have an increase in that due to services increase in cost, just like every other department is citing. But also we have some new costs because we're not sharing equipment with the jail. The main one that comes to mind with that is we used to share a multi-function copier, scanner, faxer. But we have to have our own, and so we don't share it anymore. So that's a cost we need to budget for.
You're looking at 325-830?
Yes, sir.
I see it going down, not going up.
So those were just from amendments from this year to the budget to move some money around. Previously, I believe last year we had requested, I believe the request was 50.
Nope,
So-
55,747.
I believe that would factor in different budget amendments or
The
adjustments through the
amended
year.
This
That's not what we're
40,718 is through June. Is that right, Katie?
It's through June and about the first week of July, first few days of July.
But you're anticipating spending 55,747.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So assuming that your ending number is forecasted fairly correctly, you're actually looking for less.
Yes, because we made some adjustments to come down on some of the things that we cost share with
Okay.
other agencies to share some of that cost. For cell phones, so last year we had requested 17,000. This year we're requesting 18,000. It's a small increase. Last year was, I wouldn't say a shot in the dark, but we were trying to find that fine balance of, we were transitioning from Verizon to FirstNet for a lot of our cell phones and our MDTs that are in the responder vehicles. And we had a lot of credits on the account and we didn't know when all those were going to expire, how much they were going to be. So we'd made our best estimate. We are going to fall a little bit short we're going to be a little bit over 17,000. We'll cover that. We'll be fine for this year. So next year I'm asking for 18,000 to make sure it's fully covered.
We pay the $3 surcharge on all our cell phones.
Sure do.
Didn't that make sense?
No, it doesn't. I was afraid to ask.
So you're averaging about 3250 a quarter based on the 10,300.
I haven't figured it out by quarter. I do have it figured out by month because
Okay.
it's monthly billing, but
Well, based on that, I mean, it's the same either way. You show that you're gonna spend about 13 or $14,000 this year. Not 17,000.
so when I pull up, I keep a separate spreadsheet for tracking. And the reason I do that is so that I can answer the another question of being, how much do we pay for that are not dispatch specific cell phones? We certainly don't pay $17,000 for me to have a cell phone. There's a lot of things in this line item. A lot of it is MDTs. So right now, our monthly bill that comes out of this budget is right around $1,454 every month. Of that amount, roughly $1,000 is not dispatched. Those are MDTs. Those are in the police cars, the fire trucks, the ambulances. So that's why that dollar amount was so high. I'd have to do some more math to try to get a quarterly amount, but that's the monthly amount.
Yeah. Yeah, you just take the 10. I'm not, for $1,000, I'm not gonna debate it.
No, it's $1,000 a month.
It's a month, yeah, per month.
So about $12,000 a year is actually not their equipment. It's equipment within other
Well, he's talking about
unit.
from
From year to
current
year.
budget to next 17,000.
Amended budget
18,000.
to your request, there's $1,000 difference.
Yes,
I'm not-
that's correct.
I'm not gonna waste anybody's time on it.
When we moved down to equipment repair, I made the request last year. We used to have two different line items for equipment repair. I didn't really see the need to do that. I asked to combine those. There's no change in that. If you go back prior to last year, it looks like a huge increase, but we combined the two. So same amount requested. We are going to exceed that one as well this year. As far as rent, I think that, I mean, I guess I'll cover it, but I feel it's a self-explanatory. We moved into our own space, dedicated space. There's new expenses, gas, water, all those things increased. We have our own dedicated space now, so we gotta figure that out.
So rent is utilities or just an
It's
allocation?
a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
It's utilities, it's supplies like toilet paper, Kleenex, cleaning supplies, etc.
Got it.
Dues and registrations, we were trying to find where we were going to land on what agency or not agencies, what associations were appropriate for us to be a part of. And I believe, as you can see, this year was 1,055. I requested 1,100 just in case there's a small increase with those. I believe we're at a good point with our memberships of organizations we're a part of. Employee physicals, I'm asking to keep it the same. Projecting out that we right now only have one vacancy. Why do we need $400 when there's $75 a piece? Well, in this industry, we haven't been fully staffed. And now that Katie said fully staffed, we probably won't be. So
All right.
I'm requesting to just keep it the same.
Keep the budget low.
Training in schools is the same amount as requested as last year. There is a slight increase from previous years. Training costs are going up, travel costs are going up. They're finally starting to come back with in-person courses. And I will tell you the general consensus from my staff is that in-person courses are a lot better than virtual. We've had some very bad experiences with virtual courses where I've actually sent an employee to take it in person, even though they took it virtual. It was just awful. So I'm requesting to keep that the same. Computer support, we tried to combine some things that were in other line items. So that requested amount includes the cost for Carhu, our Microsoft subscriptions, Adobe, and Duo. So that's the reason for that increase. The last line item here is lien access. Becky, and the Sheriff's Department have been trying to work with our vendor to get an accurate dollar amount for a lot of years. I'm going to knock on wood again that I think we finally have one. It's been quite a struggle to get here. So the amount that we paid this year, the reason the request is a little bit more is to factor in the increased cost. There has not been a single year they have not increased the cost. So we don't foresee that being a change. It's going to continue to go up. The unfortunate reality with that one as well is we only have one option. their sole source vendor for that access. We can't go anywhere else. So we're stuck with them. We have to pay what they charge us. This one is also a shared cost with the sheriff's department. So we sat down and we figured out what was dispatch's portion of that to try to be a little more fair across the board.
What are you doing with your equipment?
With the equipment line item is the same. The request for that is just for, as we look into the future, the different needs that we have. So you're referring to the 970 line item, correct?
Yes.
Like new equipment. Yep. So we still have some needs to build up our redundancy and our resiliency. One of the things that this was used for in the past was for our 911 anywhere kit. So we can take 911 calls anywhere that has cell service. So next on the docket is to have our CAD, our computer solution in the same boat, and our radio system in the same, so that we can be modular and go anywhere that we need to go to still provide the service. So that's why I'm requesting to keep that the same.
And how much are we transferring in from general?
40?
So the only transfer in from the general fund is specific to the services provided to the other agencies like the lien. Obviously that comes from the general fund because it's courts and sheriff's office. So that's the support line that's transferred in. To balance the budget, I used fund balance to balance the budget.
Oh,
I haven't transferred anything from the general fund to balance the budget. That's specific for the services.
okay. I
Yeah.
thought you said you're gonna have to use general fund.
Well, so in a perfect world, if we had to utilize what's budgeted of fund balance to balance this budget, we would be down to a 10% fund balance for this fund. So, obviously that's not within our policy. 10% is pretty low. So we need to consider other options if it comes down to it. Because we're pretty tight on this budget, and if things keep continuing the way they are, we won't balance the budget next year with anything but general fund dollars.
What are the other options?
You could go for a special millage, you could allocate general fund dollars, or that's kind of your option. Or you cut services.
And do I see that amount being 140 some that's needed?
Looks like 139, 100.
Yeah.
Well, there's 38 up top too.
Where you see 38.
Fund balance used from previous
Oh.
years. Oh, that's.
Yeah, that's different. That's a 139, 100. So that's budgeting the use of fund balance. Obviously, it's projections, so it doesn't mean that's the exact number. And if there's vacancies, obviously that helps that number and those sorts of things. But if this budget was completely accurate, that's how much fund balance would need to be taken to balance the budget at the end of the fiscal, which puts your fund balance at 10%, which really diminishes your rainy day fund if it's needed. I've been saying this is coming for a couple of years. For many years, the budget wasn't necessarily projected correctly. And then we had a joint director for a time, so that saved quite a bit of money. We also are never fully staffed, so that helps save the money. But now that we're hopefully getting to that point where we're, getting at that level of service we've been striving to be at for years, it's putting things that are pretty tight and almost getting us in trouble.
Katie, with respect to fund balance policy, I think you're talking about the 25%, is that right?
Correct.
I always just related that to the general fund. Are you talking, does that policy apply to all of all fund balances?
We've applied it to all fund balances where we can. This one has always been healthy, but as you know, we used some of that money for the expansion project. The only fund that's not been at 20%, and we've been working to get it there, is the jail.
Okay.
But everyone else is at that 25% plus as a fund balance. Now, if we want to rework that policy and really look at our, funds across the board and decide on a fund balance policy that says we're just going to have 25% of the total budget versus 25% of each individual fund, we could take that action, and that then would be a smaller dollar amount that we would have in reserve per se.
I think in another setting, that's worth discussing,
Mhm.
because until this moment, I didn't have that clear understanding.
Yep.
I was always just relating it to general fund.
So we strive for the fund balance to be at 25 in each individual fund.
Okay, gotcha. And in some cases, 15% might be appropriate and satisfy the auditor.
Yeah, and that's very true. I mean, we have some funds that are quite small. Doesn't make sense to have, such a large number.
Okay, discussion for another time.
Anything else regarding central dispatch?
Thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
All right, so we have 10 minutes before some folks have to leave, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what would you like to do?
So which one's gonna be longer? Clerk's office or the sheriff?
Sheriff's office would probably be longer. than
For the
clerk
clerk, so we can get it over and done with.
That's fine with me. Sorry.
I'll be really quick.
Where is it at?
Oh.
I did I wrote up
Nope.
something.
For the clerk. You're out.
I did email this to you
Sorry, guys.
yesterday,
I'm
Didn't
sorry.
mean to waste your time.
just because I knew it'd be hard to take notes and talk at the same time. But
Which one is yours?
I'm 215.
Yep, so Tammy's 101-215 on the front page is revenues, and then a few pages back is gonna be her expenditures.
Really, yep, well, it's in, yeah, 101.
Pink paper.
Really, everything basically stayed the same in it until
General fund or?
General fund, yep, 101-215.
we do not make money in the clerk's office. We have not very much coming in for revenue. So everything basically stayed the same. I did give you a sheet. I had emailed it yesterday too, just to kind of show you what goes on in the clerk's office. I didn't do it for the fact that we need anybody more. I just wanted to give you a general rundown of what the responsibilities are in the clerk's office. All the different types of things that we do. I am requesting, a 7% increase for myself and the chief deputy, due to the responsibilities that are in there. And also due to the position itself. There's been a lot of changes with laws and policies and everything that we're now responsible for. I am underneath the medium wage bracket in the comparisons. So, and I had a speech all planned, and I can't remember it. But part of it is too, with the wage study, and I don't want to say that that was a bad thing. It wasn't. It was a very good thing. You guys increased the chief deputies back when you saw that they were underpaid. Like Paul, I wish you would have done when we were in office, but then you also did the job study, and it put the deputy clerks up at a higher wage. I know we have to keep a bracket between the percentage. I don't know what that is between my deputy clerk and my chief deputy, and then myself and the chief deputy. So just looking at what the wages are in comparison, I'm asking for 7%. That does include the 3% COLA in there. I'm not asking for 7% over the 3% COLA if we get that. I'll take any questions. I'm not gonna walk off the job if I don't get it. If you don't ask, you don't.
So that's 7.
So in essence, she's
Someone else
asking
asked
for an additional 4.
Right.
I think what was striking to me in the comparisons was that, Benzie and Oceana counties seem to pay their clerk, treasurer, and register of deeds the same wage,
Mhm.
while other counties do it differently.
And we've always done it where they got paid the same wages. I mean, and I'm not saying their office isn't any more important than my office, but
And I'm not saying that either, but looking at the things that you do,
Mhm.
it seems to be, a little bit heavier, and a
Mhm.
little bit more diverse.
Mhm.
The things that are required with
Mhm.
your
Correct.
service you provide to the community and your responsibilities with the court.
Correct. And that's what I was trying to show in the memo that.
And that was striking to me.
Mhm.
So, and I'm assuming Sheboygan County, when they combined their treasurer and their clerk. Did they combine with clerk? So the register of deeds and their clerk,
Mhm.
they took, because their wages aren't that much higher, they just must have a significant amount of support staff below those two. Is that?
I don't know the number of staff they have in their
Okay,
office. I didn't
alright.
get that information. But I think Sheboygan is quite a bit less dynamic.
Hey, hey, hey,
Is that a way
some
to?
of us
say
grew up there.
it? Okay, sorry.
Less dynamic is probably a good word.
Not to, it's,
So would there be justification for not making these elected officials at the same wage level based on?
based on the information we have, we're one of the few that don't differentiate between the elected officials. I think up until just some few years ago, even the sheriff made the same as the
Mhm.
rest of them, and you adjusted the sheriff based on reasoning premise. I don't know the reasoning for it. But we're one of the few who don't differentiate between the elected officials. So for us, if we were to make that change, we're not out of the norm.
I tell you, I'm gonna guess at why that happened. Townships,
Could be,
a lot of the townships, the clerk, the treasurer, the supervisor all make the same,
that could be.
at least in my district.
And it has for, ever since I started, it's been that way.
Yeah, as far as I know, Benzie's always just treated them the same, period.
And they've always just received the COLA. They never looked at getting a raise outside of the COLA.
So Tammy, your chief deputy clerk
Mhm.
is making above the median wage. And you're making below the median
Uh-huh.
wage.
And that's probably just due to the fact is we just brought the chief deputies up a year ago.
Yeah, all of
Or
our
two,
chief
year and a
deputies
half ago.
probably would have been lower
Mhm.
until a year and a half ago when we made that call.
I get that, but I'm worried about where they're at now.
Yeah, well, quite honestly, it takes the adjustment off the table for me if they're at the top of their wage bracket, for me.
Yeah, so you all have the data. The chief deputy clerk is above median but below highest. The chief deputy treasurer is above median but below highest. The chief deputy register of deeds is the highest. Chief assistant prosecutor is above medium but below highest.
Isn't
And the
that where we
under
strive to
sheriff,
be?
what?
Isn't that where we want to be?
Yes, ma'am. And the under sheriff is the lowest, well, almost the lowest of the comparables.
We're gonna fix that, man.
Are you
Yes.
kidding?
No, yeah, they do.
Mhm.
So yeah, so we have strived over the last couple of years to want to be at medium or above. That's what we've been striving to be at. So that is part of the reason I provided that additional information showing the medium, the highest and the lowest for all of these wages plus my own, is because that's what we've been striving to do over the last couple of years, is place our folks that they don't necessarily have to be the highest, but we do want to be part of that upper half. Competitive, exactly. So that's why that information is in there.
Does it change this wage lines materially by taking the deputy clerk out of it and giving the county clerk the requested increase?
So if we give just the county clerk the requested increase, it's $4,600 in addition to what's budgeted in that wage line now.
4,600.
Correct.
And do I understand what it says wages include longevity for clerk?
Mhm.
So that's 7%. It's not plus longevity. Those are,
Longevity is treated separately, so they have a base wage plus they get this check annually for their time served.
okay,
So that's factored in already into that wage line, but that's treated separate as their salary.
okay.
And once I'm gone out of office, unless there was I don't think.
There's only a handful
Yeah,
left of
that longevity
longevity.
is completely out of the picture at
Yeah.
that point.
There's just a few folks left across the organization.
So if you adjust out those things that you don't have control over and gave you the 7% raise, that's about a $15,000 increase is what you're asking for. Because it's 49,000, 38,000 of that is things you can't control.
And I had added two with the chief deputy, just, I knew at one time we had to keep within a certain,
So the commission, when you guys adjusted the chief deputies, indicated that you would strive to maintain like that healthy percentage gap. Because we were getting in that point. Sorry, there's bugs.
You just take a hit of acid or what?
It's a gnat. Dead now. Because we've gotten in that trouble where it was, 2% between the positions. And so we indicated we'd strive to keep a larger percentage, which I think was 12 or 13%, but I'd have to go back and look specifically. And I just want to point out, Art, too, the differences in her expenditures also include reimbursing the townships for election reasons. With all the new changes, her office has to facilitate the grant. And so it shows additional expenditures, but that's because she's taken in funding and giving it to the townships for election purposes, which is an added cost as well that she has to administer because the state told her to.
Okay.
So
So
really,
while the-
I don't know if her expenditures actually went up. I'd have to do the numbers, but I'm not sure they went up much at all when you factor out that grant administration for the townships.
So we got these guys here. I suggest that we support this and but not support the request for the deputy clerk.
I think we gotta look at it a little more closely. I think there's an issue with the treasurer not requesting an increase. The Register of Deeds requesting one. If I look at the trend of where these should probably fall in proportion, we can't impact the Register of Deeds if Kelly doesn't want any kind of increase. But Tammy definitely needs some sort of adjustment. I think we need to talk about this again.
Yep. So again, please plan on a study session after our next board meeting. And we will focus on this topic as well as go through the rest of the general fund and high level overview of the rest of the budget documents like I typically do.
I thought you all were going to stay and try to finish this
No.
up.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
I
thanks,
didn't
Chair.
think for you guys
Thanks.
to leave.
I thought somewhere I saw the register was making 70,000.
Okay,
See that here,
I think
but I
that's
thought in
it then.
here.
All right,
I think that.
past public
yeah,
comment,
Maybe that's what that 3% cost of living.
looking for a motion